Welcome, investigator. Evil is on the rise. Crime is escalating. Our mission is to eliminate the crime by exposing evil, examine why it manifests, and highlight the brave souls that confront it every day. Join us as we work together to bring justice to every victim. Welcome to All Things Crime. Here's your host, Jared Bradley.
Hey everybody, it's Jared. Welcome to another episode of All Things Crime. Have a awesome guest today. His name's Frank Bruno. He was a lieutenant with the NYPD, and with this being end of August, and first part of September, we're coming up on 9/11 again. And so I wanted to bring Frank on. I saw him respond to a post, and he said, hey, he was on top of that pile of the Trade Center back in 2001. So I thought he would have a unique story to tell us. And most importantly, you know, we all swore whenever we saw pictures of the World Trade Center and especially when it was burning and seeing those planes hit into it, that we would never forget. And so as part of our obligation to never forget, I wanted to bring on somebody that was actually there. So Frank, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Jared. Quick thing. I'm a retired New York City detective. I'm not a lieutenant. Just want to make that clear.
I thought I saw on your LinkedIn profile that you were a lieutenant.
Sorry, no, I was a detective, third grade. So
okay.
At the time during the World Trade Center, I was actually a police officer in Midtown North Precinct.
Okay.
On that weekend, I was actually doing a detail. It was my RDO, regular day off for that day. The day before, I was invited to go do a security detail for a fashion show. So we worked until 11:30, 12 o'clock the night before, September 11th. And I entered the precinct, and we were scheduled to do a 7 a.m. detail at the United Nations building for the cabbies that were doing a demonstration at the UN building, which is Manhattan South Borough. And the sergeant grabbed me as I came in at 11:30 and said, I didn't see you, Frank, but your regular day off, 8.5 hours of overtime is still there, but they canceled the detail at midnight. And I went, well, very rare that I'll do this, but I'll say, you know what? No, I'm not going to take the 8.5 hours. He goes, oh, don't worry. I'm going to put you in a car. You'll be the borough response team for Manhattan South, which is like, you'll be a zero. You'll do nothing. It'll be an easy day for you. And I'm like, you know what? Newly married with trying to have my first child, I'm going home. For some strange reason, I go home and I get the phone call at, 9 o'clock, 8:45, turn on the TV and jump out of bed, race down to the city. And as I'm racing to the city, there's the George Washington Bridge is shut down. So I have a truck. I drive up the Palisades Parkway on the grass all the way to the bridge where the entrance is, and there's nothing but traffic. So I get around, I see a bunch of cops. They clear traffic so I can actually get up around the backside up onto the bridge, right at the bridge now with Port Authority and New Jersey State Troopers and a few chiefs from the State Police and the Port Authority at the bridge, waiting for them to open the bridge and let us go over the bridge so we can get to our precincts and get down to the Trade Center. While I'm there, I'm listening to the chief from the Port Authority and a chief from the State Police have conversations with the FBI and Special Task Force of bringing in helicopters to actually stop trucks that have explosives in them before a few of the bridges and a few of the tunnels, and confirmed it and listened to as they actually took a couple of trucks with task force in a helicopter and SWAT teams take down numerous trucks that have explosives. So you didn't hear much about that on the news other than that morning briefly, and then kind of 86'd it, and you never heard from that again on the news. But that was the beginning of my day. Proceeded to go down to the World Trade Center as I got to work at 11 o'clock, 11:30. Made it down to the Trade Center the day of to help clean up a disaster that this nation's never seen anything like that before. That, you hear stories about the dirt, the dust. It was absolutely, you couldn't breathe. You put a mask on, a paper mask, you couldn't keep it there for more than a minute or two before it just completely caked up with dust. And I got to say, for the emergency management team of City of New York and the fire department and the police department's coordination to actually section everything off and save a lot of time and effort of lives was amazing to watch the big bosses come in and coordinate this, which I don't know if many people have ever seen a military action, but this was a short military action that was amazing to watch as a cop. But from that day, it was 18 hours a day, 7 days a week on the pile with the bucket brigade. Not a great
Wow.
4 weeks that I spent there.
So where, Frank, where, yeah. So where were you actually when the towers got hit?
I was actually in bed at home, upstate New York, Monroe, New York.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
at that time, I jumped in my truck and managed to get down there at around noon, down to my precinct at
Okay.
54th Street.
So the towers had already, the towers had actually already fallen by the time you got there.
Yes. So it's pretty funny how everything works out, and I can't tell you how many colleagues, firemen, that were supposed to be at work and didn't go to work or went home for some strange reason, and the stories are just endless about that day, that morning. Just changes everything, that they're still here. And then all the guys and girls that I worked with that have developed cancer, like myself, I've had cancer twice, skin cancer twice, and I lost a good number of friends to different types of cancer.
Yeah. It's the tragedy continues. It's like the effects of it just keep rippling out further and further. It affects not only the 3,000 people that died that day, but the number of people that have suffered since the last 23 years is just absolutely incredible. So I remember just watching that. My brother had gotten married the day before, and I was actually at Lake Tahoe and got a phone call early that morning. So we were like Pacific time, so it was really early for us. But got a phone call from my mom that was in the next room, and she said, "You got to turn your TV on." So at the time, I was a company commander of a reserve unit. So we were like, "Oh man!" Once they determined it was a terror attack, we're like, "Okay, it's game on." So anyway, So Frank, one of the things that I wanted to ask you is, what was the overall attitude of everybody there? I mean, you said you were part of the bucket brigade, and you were just basically, trying to save people, clearly.
Yeah, the first week.
What was the general attitude down there?
Well, attitude was null. There was none. I mean, it was all about what can we do. People couldn't get out of their way fast enough to do something. It was really all about shock and awe the first couple of days, and then it kind of settled into, let's focus on what are we doing? Can we save anybody? Is there anybody there to save? And all we were really finding was small pieces.
Yeah.
We didn't find people. And it was kind of a disappointment, to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
But the guys, nobody wanted to leave.
Well, yeah,
there were guys that never left.
There might be somebody.
Yeah. And we went through, I can't tell you how many times of, there's a good possibility that, here's a crevice, or here's through the American Express towers. There were tunnels that went underneath into the transit, because Transit Bureau, I don't know if most people don't know this, but there's some levels in New York City, the subway system is 7 floors deep. So there's all kinds of subchambers that run all different rails that haven't been used in 50 years. So there's rooms upon rooms upon rooms that are all subsurface, that have been built way back in the 20s when they originally built the subways. So there's a lot of that stuff that guys were getting into, but you can't go in there without the proper shoring and safety, coordination, because with the amount of weight that was on the street from the buildings themselves, guys were getting hurt like crazy because everybody wanted to do something. It was all about, trying not to get hurt. But everybody that I spoke to.
You're down there for a few days, and
I'm sorry. Go right ahead, Jared.
I'm sorry. Now, well, so you're down there for a few days. You're kind of in saving mode, trying to figure out if there's anybody actually alive under that huge pile.
Yeah.
And I don't think most people understand how big of a pile that was. I mean, in your estimation, how tall was the actual pile of the trade center?
Approximately 5 to 8 stories high, and probably 5 blocks radius. But don't forget, the towers.
Yeah, it's just incredible.
The towers themselves, had 3 stories, 4 stories subsurface. So as the towers were, grinding on their way down with all the concrete and steel, it actually pulverized everything inside those buildings into small dust and debris. I mean, most of the 98% of the parts of people were small pieces. That's really what the recovery was.
Yeah.
Being in the morgue for a little while, there weren't a lot of big pieces coming in. It was all size of a tennis ball at the best, at its biggest. So the smell down there was
I
not a friendly smell between the concrete itself and the smell of death, which, if any cops that have had any real experience have been on a DOA, and I've been on quite a few of them in my career, it's not pleasant. I don't care how much coffee you burn on a stove, it's not going to help overpower that stench.
Yeah. Well, it's not for the faint of heart, definitely.
No. And a lot of the people wouldn't even go home. They stayed.
Well, Frank, what, yeah. Well, I think part of that was just like you said, the shock of being there. They're realizing that there were thousands of people that had literally been pulverized, and just essentially were just almost non-existent anymore.
Yeah.
I actually had a friend that was working out in Staten Island, on the big fields that they were creating out there as they were clearing the debris from the towers.
Yeah.
They had to take it out there to Staten Island to be sorted.
By the way, that landfill was actually as toxic as the actual tower site itself. I mean, it was a horrible, horrible smell at that site, dealing with all of that material that was there.
Yeah.
And a lot of the parts were found out there because they had to be sifted through a second and a third and a fourth time because it was such small pieces that they literally had to sift through it so many times to get all of it. As a matter of fact,
so
a year or two later, in Midtown, there were parts of an airplane in between 2 buildings that were never even found until a year or two later. In Midtown, which is 50 something blocks away.
Wow.
Yeah, most people don't know that either.
One of the airliners that had hit the building?
Yes, a piece of one of the airplanes broke off upon impact and wound up in Midtown somewhere. I think it was 51st Street between 10th and 11th Avenue, if I remember correctly. That's where one of the guys from our precinct had found a piece in between 2 buildings and was like, wait a minute, what is that? And after, recovery, they realized it's a piece of plane. They're like, wait, where did that come from? And that's the only thing that they could think of. And they later on identified it as a piece of one of the planes.
Wow. That's crazy. Yeah, I've never heard that. That's crazy.
There's a lot of things in the
So
news
Frank,
that
what was
you don't hear.
as yeah, oh, absolutely. So as it kind of went from uh the thought of actually saving people that might have survived to just kind of a recovery, um did the attitude, I know the attitude of everybody working down there was, hey, we gotta get this done, but was there ever kind of an anger toward the people that did it? Did that ever really surface? Was that kind of tamped down and said, look, we got a job to do. We got to just keep focused on what we're doing?
Uh, Jared, were you ever in law enforcement? Were you a cop?
No, I was military, but I was never a
Okay.
cop.
So military still have the same type of persona, but as cops work, it's amongst each other. You can joke around, you can kid around, and that kind of makes light of a lot of bad situations. I know it sounds callous, but that's pretty much how cops' theory of getting over a lot of really negative things. At that particular case, the first couple of weeks was very somber, very low key, no ball breaking, so to speak, as uncommon of cops. And especially with a whole bunch of firemen on the job site. There's nothing but, tit for tat with cops and firemen, even though it's a love, but it's not the kind of love it's more like a brother-sister love, you know? But it never changed
Right.
until about the fourth or fifth week when they realized there's not another human being saved here. This is just basically going through the motions of digging. And that's when the construction guys started to take over at that point and bring in the heavy equipment. And it was a realization that we're just there doing security now. You know what I mean? So the
Hmm.
thrill, the rush, spending 12 to 18 hours a day there really didn't have any other impact other than, you know what, we're here. Let's, commence with each other and the ball breaking begins. And it kind of lightened up a little bit, especially when I got to say this much across the country. I've never experienced firemen and cops from all around the country and the world for that matter coming to New York to do some kind of help. Well, even if it was just stand there and do nothing. They wanted to be there. They wanted to be a part of it. And I got to say, every one of you guys and ladies that did that, thank you. That changed how we felt. It made a big difference in everyday occurrence of why are they here? Oh, we're almost entertaining them now. What restaurants to go to, what to go see, what sightseeing. It changed a completely different thought process for almost a year or two after 9/11. Even the citizens of New York, would stand on the west side on our way down there, down from 54th Street down to Vesey and Chambers. They would stand out with signs. Thank you. We love you. God bless America. You know, that all has cascaded back
Yeah.
into we hate the blue. You know what I mean? And it's just to see that difference is just absolutely amazing. And it's a shame. It's a
Hmm.
shame this country's gone so far extreme on the other side.
Yeah. Well, sadly enough, the patriotism and the unity that we all saw and on 9/11 and the immediate aftermath, sadly most of that has disappeared and we're back to,
Yeah.
hey, we hate the cops and yeah, I posted a video on my YouTube channel,
Okay.
just basically it was just saying that nobody hates a bad cop more than a good cop.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And it's amazing. Some of the comments, the comments on there are just incredible. There's just so many people that are basically saying, there's no such thing as a good cop. And I'm like, you know what? That's just not true.
Wow.
That is not true. You know, there's bad apples in every profession, and no matter even if it's a doctor, eventually they kind of screw up and kind of expose themselves. And when they do, then, the doctors will get rid of them. The medical system will get rid of the bad doctors. Well, it's kind of the
Absolutely.
same way for cops
Absolutely.
and firemen and military and everything else.
Yeah.
And so I just, the concept that, that police don't ever police themselves is it's just so wrong. But sadly, that's the attitude now.
And the circumstances that it comes to, there's nothing worse than a bad cop. And I don't mean it in that sense. If you're a bad cop, I'm sorry, you deserve to go to jail. End of story. If you're just a good cop that's having a bad day and you catch an attitude with somebody, and okay, everybody has bad days, everybody has good days. You can't blame them people for being human. But there's a big difference between a human cop and a bad cop. I hope everybody understands that. Regardless, I don't think the public gets the idea of what cops really do. That they put their own life in jeopardy every minute of every day that they get in that uniform. And they put their life on the line for everybody else in this country. And now I'm retired. I never stopped being a cop, period. It's in your blood. It doesn't change. It doesn't go away. No matter what, if something bad's going down, I'm stopping to help, period. I don't care if they're a cop or not. That's just in our blood. It's just what we do. It's who you are. And thank you for all the law enforcement that's out there doing the job, because without you, we can't be safe. Did I lose you, Jared?
Yeah, the concept that society would even exist, let alone function, without law enforcement is just, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it's
so
you always have the real interesting folks that are basically saying, we don't need cops anymore. Like, you know what? You have no idea how bad things would get and how quickly
somebody running for
law
president
enforcement wasn't
not
all
a pro
over the
cop
place.
Person.
Yeah. Yep.
Jared, if you don't mind, I want to just mention one thing.
Frank, I sure.
We're a bunch of retired cops and firemen on Team 9/11, and we actually shoot sporting clays. We coach kids and other cops across the country at all the events that we go, and we promote law enforcement and first responders to come out to shooting clubs for the outdoor shooting sports. And we travel nationally with that, and we also help promote Tunnel to Towers, which is a great organization. The bottom line is we're always looking to help cops and kids, because that's our future. And without a good, positive future, we're never going to be the country that we once were.
Oh, absolutely. So, I'll tell you, Frank, I will in the show notes, I will publish all of your links. And so for anybody that wants to get involved, definitely contact you or reach out to your organization. And
thank you.
Yeah, I'm yet to meet a cop that retires that isn't doing something productive, and still contributing to society. I mean, there's a few, of course, that it just go off into the sunset and play golf every day. I don't know how you do it, but
good for them.
Being productive in my mind is, yeah, but definitely,
Jared,
giving back.
Thank you, Jared, for all you do.
Continuing to give back to the community.
Thank you for what you're doing. We appreciate it very much.
Oh, absolutely. It's my pleasure. So, all right, Frank. Well, I appreciate you coming on and telling a little bit about your story and help folks remember, because that we need to get back to that unity that we used to feel after 9/11, and both appreciating first responders, but also appreciating the country, because that was really the last time I think everybody was proud to be an American.
Yeah, I think so. It was proud and sad all at the same time.
Thanks for joining us. Your attention today brings us one step closer to exposing and eliminating the evil that brings crime to our communities. Hit subscribe and share this episode. Together, we will bring justice to every victim.